The Check Interference tool helps us check if the various parts in our model are interfering with one another. To see this tool available and not have it grayed out as you can see here, you first need to select multiple parts. For example, I can hold the Shift key and select this part, and then the tool will be available. In this case, if I click it, you'll see this notification which says no interferences have been detected. That's because there's no interferences in our model. But just for fun, let's create an interference. I'll select onto this part, activate the triball, and then drag that part down into the part below it. Now you can see there'll definitely be an interference there. Instead of Shift key selecting individual parts this time like that, I'm going to do a box select and select every part in our model. Note that if your model is very complex, sometimes it can involve a lot more computing power to calculate all of the interferences than just a select area. So it is sometimes useful just to select the area you're focusing on. I'll now click Check Interference on the whole model here, and you can see now an interference report has been provided. We can see the parts in our model that are interfering, which in this case is just this group. There's only one interference detected. If we zoom in, we can see a red highlight where the parts are interfering. Because these steel sections are hollow, we're only getting a thin band of interference because of course on the inside it's hollow, so those two parts aren't interfering on the inside there because it's empty space. We can also select on the interference, and that will then highlight the parts involved with that interference. Or we can change the display option over to suppress other shapes, which will then suppress everything other than the interference we have selected. If you have more than one interference in the model, they'll display as line items here. So for example, let's create another interference and maybe a more complex one. I'll activate the tribal on this part. I'm going to move the tribal up to this face or a bit below the face, and I'm going to create a copy of this part here at 90 degrees and purposefully place this one just below the face there so that it will have a big interference going all the way along. Then I'll create another copy, this time over here, and make an interference between all these different corner items. Now again, I'll select everything in our model and select Check Interference. As you can see, we now have an interference report with more interferences in it. In this case, there are 5 interferences detected, and we have different line items for each interference. If we zoom in, we can now see a big red highlight for where those two parts are interfering. And now again, we can select on the individual parts to look at their interferences. In this case, I'll move over to here, and we can see the interference will show on the parts we've selected and not on the other parts. So, for example, of course, all of these parts have an interference in them, but the interference will only show on the part we have selected here on the left-hand side in the interference report. So, we're currently looking at this interference here. This is easier to understand if we suppress the other shapes. So we can see we have an interference there that we need to fix. We also need to fix that interference and that interference there as well. If we switch back over to highlight the intersecting pair, we can now see all the parts in the model there. And in this case, I'll now select Close. That's how to use the Check Interference tool.